our channel for your civil services examinations preparations conducted by the UPSC as well as other government competitive examinations. All right, so let's begin with the lecture. All right, so the first news basically is flashing regarding the Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, which is a PSU, right, gets a contract for the light combat aircraft. So that is 83 numbers. So HAL gets the contracts of 48,000 crore deal. So it is 48,000 crore deal for the 83 light combat aircraft right here. So you know that 13th edition of the Aero India show, which is going on at Bengaluru, Karnataka. So in this 13th edition of the Aero India show, which is conducted by the Ministry of Defense with Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, right, which has basically awarded the contract of 83 light combat aircraft. These 83 light combat aircraft, which are also known as Tejas, or these are basically, or these aircraft have been renamed as a Tejas in 2003, okay, for Indian Air Force. So here 83 such Tejas would be built by, or would be manufactured by the Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, which is a PSU. So these awards is a significant award in terms of the production of the 4th generation indigenous fighter craft, right? So here the HAL Tejas is a single engine aircraft. So it is built up of single engine. It is a 4th generation multi-role fighter aircraft, which is designed by the Aeronautical Developmental Agency, which is again PSU, right? In a collaboration of Aircraft Research and the Design Center of the Hindustan Aeronautics Limited for Indian Air Force as well as for the Indian Navy. So right, so HAL Tejas would be used for Indian Air Force as well as for the Indian Navy, right? It is basically designed by the Aeronautics Development Agency with collaboration with Aircraft Research and Design Center. All right, regarding this program, which is also called the light combat aircraft, so it is basically the lightest among all such combat aircraft which is basically there, right, throughout the world in terms of 4th generation. So it is the lightest among them, right, one of the lightest among them. So this light combat aircraft program was started in 1980s, right? Why this program was started? This program was started to replace the India's MiG-21 fighters. So you would be also knowing that news that the MiG-21 fighters are crashing day by day, right? Because the outdated technology, or because of the the fleet is very old. So to replace that fleet of MiG-21 fighters, the light combat aircraft program was started in 1980s. All right. As I told you that in 2003, the light combat aircraft was officially renamed as Tejas. So now it is called as light combat aircraft Tejas. It is renamed as a Tejas. Okay. So Tejas means it is basically a tailless compound delta wing configuration. It is the name of the configuration, which is a tailless, right? Which is having a single vertical stabilizer, right? Which provides a better high alpha performance characteristics, right? So it is having the better performance characteristics among 4th generation fighter craft, okay, with the conventional design wing aircraft, right? And it also integrates the technologies which are basically technical in the nature. So you can read those technologies like relaxed static stability, fly-by-wire flight control system, multi-mode radar system, right? Integrated digital avionics system and composite material structure, right? So it is having certain technology which is related to them, and it is the smallest and the lightest in the class of the contemporary supersonic combat aircraft. So as I told you that it is the lightest and the smallest in the class of supersonic combat aircraft, which is of 4th generation. Okay, the Tejas, which is also known as light combat aircraft, is a second supersonic fighter, right? It is a second supersonic fighter which was developed by again Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, which is a PSU. The first such supersonic fighter which was developed by the Hindustan Aeronautics Limited was the HF-24 Marud. So HF-24 Marud, which was also developed by the Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, which was the first supersonic fighter. And after that, the second supersonic fighter was also developed by the Hindustan Aeronautics Limited. Okay, the production of this Tejas Mark 1 for the Indian Air Force was begin in 2006, right? Now you must understand that Tejas is basically for both Indian Air Force as well as for the Indian Navy. This contract is basically for the Indian Air Force as well as for the Indian Navy. So you can read it here, right? So here for the contract for regarding the Indian Air Force, right? The production already started in 2016. At the same time, the naval version of the Tejas, that means the Navy will use that naval version of Tejas, right, which is undergoing currently the flight test for the Indian Navy. All right. So both of these versions are available with the Tejas. Both will be integrated with the Indian Air Force as well as for the Indian Navy. All right. And first such Tejas IF unit, which was also known as number 45 Squadron of Indian Air Force, flying daggers were also formed, right, on the 1st July 2016 with the 2 aircraft. So in that flying daggers, there are 2 aircraft which was formed under 45th Squadron of Indian Air Force. All right. Regarding the Minister of State for the Defense, which was also known as Subhas Bhamre, reported that regarding the indigenous content of the Tejas, right? So currently the indigenous content of the Tejas is around 59.7% by the value, right? And it is also consisting of 75.5% by the number of line replaceable units in 2016. So currently the indigenous content by the value is around 59.7% of the Tejas, which is not 100%. So that means India still have dependency on certain parts, right? For example, engines, which were supplied by either General Electric or some other, international agencies or international manufacturing plants, right? So India is significantly still dependent on certain parts regarding this manufacturing of these Tejas, but still we have almost 60% of the indigenous content by value for these Tejas. All right. What is the India's motive regarding this, this building of this massive, air infrastructure regarding this Tejas and, purchasing Rafale and all sort of things? What is the India's motive? So India is basically, long witnessing the unfortunate attempts by, the changing of the, status quo regarding the borders. For example, the India's borders with the Pakistan and the China is very hostile, right? The China is building, the villages. China is also building the infrastructures like road, like airways, like right, airports, aerodromes, right, along the borders of India. And India has not, developing with that pace its border as the China. As you have seen also in the Pakistan side also, the Pakistan is also a hostile nation, right, which is also, building certain set of infrastructure with the border of India. So India should be vigilant. India should be vigilant for that development, isn't it? For that infrastructure development, and India should also prepare to counter any such, unforeseen attack which was originated from China or which is originated from Pakistan. Okay, and India should able to defeat any misadventures, right, which are sourced from the China or the Pakistan, right? And India should also defend its people, right, and the territorial integrity at the all cost, right? So that is the motto behind, or that is the motive behind the building up of India's defense preparedness, right? It has no such element of threatening any country, but it has, defending its people and the territorial integrity at any cost. All right. And India's resolve towards is shown by growing defense capabilities, right? So India is basically growing its defense capability to resolve such issues with that regard. Okay. And India is also planning to spend 130 billion US dollars, right, in the military modernization in the next 7 to 8 years. So in the next 7 to 8 years, India is planning to spend 130 billion US dollars on the military modernization, which is also one of the highest among the countries, isn't it? And India is facing basically the various threats and the challenges from the multiple fronts. All right. So these threats are basically real, right, from the China, from the Pakistan, as well as certain other countries, right? And India is also victim of state-sponsored terrorism. For example, Pakistan is basically pushing the proxy wars in India, okay, which is also cause of the concern. So such state-sponsored terrorism, right, is also cause of the concern, right? Now the state-sponsored terrorism is a global threat. India is also victim of that state-sponsored terrorism, and to protect the India's territorial integrity and to defend its people, it is very, very important to build, such massive military infrastructure, or to modernize the military on the, contemporary lines to defend its own borders. All right. Then regarding the Tejas, right? So regarding this Tejas, so first of all, this contract, which is the biggest Make in India defense contract till date. So it is 48,000 crore rupees contract, which is around, biggest such contract given or awarded in the Make in India defense contract. isn't it? Under this contract, as I told you, that 83 fighter jets will be, would be purchased, right, from the Hindustan Aeronautics Limited. Among the 83 light combat aircraft Tejas, right, the 73 light combat aircraft Tejas Mk1A fighter aircraft will be purchased, and remaining 10 light combat aircraft Mk1 trainer aircraft will be purchased, right? Both of these aircraft, 73 and 10, right, 83 light combat aircraft Tejas Mk1, right, would be costing around 45,696 crore, right? So 45,696 crore, right? And it's also having certain value with regard to the design and the development of the infrastructure, which will cost you around 1,202 crore rupees. So around, you will have around 48,000 crore rupees will be spent on the procurement of the light combat Tejas aircraft, right, from the Hindustan Aeronautics Limited. Okay. And the deliveries for such 83 light combat aircraft Tejas will be completed in the 8 years from the now. So that means in 8 years, the delivery for light combat aircraft will be completed. All right.
Will be delivered, in the 8 years. All right. And basically, the globally we are facing unprecedented level of uncertainty, volatility, and interconnected threat, right? Because you must understand that there are the proxy wars which is going on, and various countries is basically pushing those terrorists and various other threats through the borders, right? Isn't it? So there are various uncertainties, volatilities, and interconnected threat. That means now the terrorism have international dimensions. So all sort of threats have been now interconnected, right? Various non-state actors are also participating, even state actors are also participating, right, which needed a greater regional coordination to resolve such type of threats, right? And India is also prepared to to defend its border through regional cooperation or regional coordination, right? And in an effort to boost the defense export, the HAL or Hindustan Aeronautics Limited also displayed an Atmanirbhar formation, right, which is basically consisting its platform regarding the light combat aircraft trainer, HTT-40 trainer aircraft, intermediate jet trainer aircraft, and advanced Hawk Mk132 and civil Dornier Do-228 aircraft. So to boost the defense exports, right, these all aircraft will be displayed and on the Atmanirbhar formation, consisting of its platform for the greater chances of export of these aircraft from India. All right. Next is DNA Technology Use and Applications Regulation Bill 2019. So this is again a bone of contention, right, between the various political parties. The BJP is pushing this bill, DNA Technology Use and Application Regulation Bill 2019. And you must understand one thing, that the DNA sample which will be collected, right, from from the suspects of the crime, right, there is high possibility that such people will be some people may be unintentionally targeted, or some people may be intentionally targeted, right? So there may be possibility of its misuse, right? So there is a huge possibility that by DNA profiling of those people, it will lead to the huge misuse and threat to the privacy and the liberty of a person, right? So let's understand about this DNA Technology Use and Application Regulation Bill 2019. So here, this bill basically allows the investigation agencies, right, those investigate related to crimes like Central Bureau of Investigation, right, which will collect the DNA samples from the suspects, right? For example, if there is a mass rioting, right, so the rights are basically recurring phenomena nowadays. So now to ascertain the real culprits, the investigation agency will basically collect those samples, right, from the mass, and it will try to match those samples with the evidence the investigation agencies will be there. So ultimately to collect the DNA sample from the suspects, right, retired Supreme Court Judge Madan B. Lokur, right, has observed in the written submission to the Parliamentary Standing Committee. So there are Parliamentary Standing Committees which are basically a platform, right, on which the various political parties or various members of both the houses basically they basically discuss regarding the bill clause by clause. So it is basically a mechanism in the parliament to have a deeper analysis regarding the bill. So the Madan B. Lokur, who was basically the retired Supreme Court judge, has observed in a written submission to such committee, which is known as the Parliamentary Standing Committee on the Science and Technology. And Madan B. Lokur basically observed that by passing this DNA technology bill, the investigation agencies will get unbridled power, right? This unbridled power would easily, right, can be, or it can be easily misused, it can be easily abused. So that power can be easily misused and abused, right? And this tantamount to the threat to the life of a person, threat to the liberty of a person, threat to the dignity of a person, and threat to the privacy of a person, right? So this will amount to the threat to life, liberty, dignity and the privacy of the person. It is observed by retired Supreme Court Judge Madan B. Lokur. All right. Now, why we use the DNA, right? Why we use the DNA? So there are certain pros and the cons, right? There are certain benefits, there are certain negatives also, right? Regarding the benefits, you can say that first of all, now in the contemporary, right, right, world, the DNA testing is going on, right, in almost all countries. Now, when you talk in terms of India, the DNA testing is basically uh, right now is only on the limited scale, right? It is only on the limited scale, and approximately the India has around 30 to 40 DNA experts, right? And India has around 15 to 18 laboratories which are undertaking such DNA profiling of the suspects, right? And such laboratories currently dealing around 3,000 cases a year. So you can say that now only 3,000 cases a year is basically, is profiled by such laboratories with the help of 30 to 40 DNA experts. So these 3,000 cases are not big, so it is extremely limited scale when we compare with some of the countries like USA, right? But you must understand, right now the standards of the laboratories are not monitored or regulated. Now this bill which is the DNA technology regulation will try to monitor, or it will try to introduce the regulation of the entire process, right, from the collection of the sample to the storage of the sample and to the disposing of the sample also. So try to regularize such entire process. Now now right, now this bill basically aims to provide the regulation of such DNA profiling or DNA, the use and application of deoxyribonucleic acid DNA technology, right, for the purpose of establishing the identity of certain categories of the person, right? So to try to identify the categories of the person, that may be, the victims of certain crime, that may be offenders, that may be suspects, that may be under trials, that may be missing person sometime, or that may be unknown diseased person, right? About them we generally cannot tell, or we cannot generally infer without the DNA technology. So DNA technology have the greater scope of uses in terms of finding out, in terms of establishing the identity of certain person. So it has the applications, or it has the application with regard to the uses of the technology. So let's understand what the Justice B. Lokur observed regarding this DNA technology regulation bill. So Justice B. Lokur basically observed that there is, is Justice Lokur basically observe what is the need of collecting this DNA of the suspect, right? So it says that if any crime occur, right, right, and if that crime basically involves a large number of people, right, specifically or precisely Justice Lokur basically referred the rights, right, if that crime involves the larger number of the people, isn't it? And everybody is basically, suspect in that case, right, isn't it? And if you don't have the real basis of, you don't have any, clue, like video footage or audio footage or something like that, everybody will be looking like a suspect, and taking off, the DNA profiling of the thousands of such people, right, would be based on the suspicion, and that would be easily misused and abused by the investigation agencies with the, when the political leaders basically pressurize them. So that is how it's happening, isn't it? So the Madan B. Lokur observed that everybody looks like suspect, right, without any real basis. So taking off such huge number of persons subjected to DNA profiling tantamount to the misuse of the life and liberty of a person, isn't it? And such DNA profiling can be easily misused and abused, right, isn't it? And it can be used against the targeting innocent persons, isn't it? Targeting against such particular community, right? And that is, tantamount to the threat to life, liberty, dignity, and the privacy of a person, isn't it? An investigation agency will get unbridled power in that regard. Okay, now observation of other members of the Parliamentary Standing Committee on the Science and Technology. So other members basically also observe regarding the passage of the DNA technology bill. So other members, that means other political parties, basically also express the concern, right, that in the suspects, right, could lead to the misuse and the targeting of certain categories of the person. These categories may be the Muslims. So there may be chances that the investigation agency may particularly target the Muslims, or investigation agency may target the Dalits or Adivasis, isn't it? So such targeting or such particular targeting of a community would tend to amount to the misuse of the power by the investigation agency, and that is huge chances of misusing, because if you see the the data from National Crime Record Bureau, right, around 75% or 80% of the people which are there behind the bars are basically Muslim, Dalits, and Adivasis, even more than that. So that means you can say that the majority of those people are basically belongs to that, and that is how it also shows that some sort of biasness against the Muslim, Dalits, and the Adivasis. And based on that data, the other political parties also in the suspicion that this bill may also target further the Muslims, Dalits, and the Adivasis in that regard. Okay, and the committee has said that taking aboard this concern, it has gone with the majority of the retaining with the preamble. All right. Now, the committee's observation regarding this DNA technology bill. So, first of all, it is not something that fear is not real. The fear is not entirely unfounded. Okay, and committee basically observed that these fears should be addressed by the government and by the parliament as well. So that fear that we are having, or that fear the political parties are having, right, they are entirely not unfounded. It has to be resolved, or it has to be addressed by the government and the parliament, right? And at the same time, the committee also, right, does not negate, right, the need of such legislation. That means the committee did not negate, right? That means the committee has not the negatively gave the view regarding such bill. Obviously the DNA technology is needed in terms of better investigation. If that investigation would happen with the professionally way, with with unbiased way, right, so that may use, or that may give the right feedback. But what happens is, if that is misused, right, that may tend amount to basically fearful for the identity of the person, or impact the identity and the liberty of a person. So for example, certain cases you can say basically exposing of the false encounter, right? So sometimes what happens is the law enforcement agency, they basically done certain encounters, right? Sometimes there are false encounters also, right, by the police personnel, by the even by Central Bureau of Investigation, or even certain agencies, isn't it? So what happens is, if any false encounter occur, let's say by Indian Armed Force also, right, so what happens is innocent persons are generally killed, right? And sometimes the law enforcement agency says that it is basically a militant or suspect, or whatever it is, says that. But because of this DNA technology bill, basically the report contradict the claim which was made by the law enforcement agencies, isn't it? So that happens. So one such example you can say that the Sofian encounter in the Kashmir last September, right, where Indian Army killed 3 men, and the Indian Army basically claimed that these men were basically unidentified terrorists. And later, because of the protest, the DNA sample have been taken from the 3 dead men, right, and these samples basically match with their families, and which confirm that it was a fake encounter, right? So that shows that the DNA technology has the huge the basically relevance in the contemporary world, provided if it is provided with the enough safeguard, adequate safeguard, right, against its misuse, against its biased enforcement. It can be proved to the most beneficial technology for the investigation agencies, right? Because we need the DNA technology for identifying suspects based on certain clues, and in that regard we need a DNA technology, right? All right. Then the UNA extends New START nuclear treaty with the Russia. All right. So here the United States of America basically extend the New START nuclear treaty. New START nuclear treaty means it is basically, I will tell you what is the START nuclear treaty. So previously there was a Cold War between between the communist bloc and basically your capitalist bloc, isn't it? So here one side you have the countries led by the USSR, and the second side you have the capitalist country led by the United States of America, isn't it? So both of these countries will basically fought this Cold War. Now both of these countries had undertaken this nuclear treaty based on which certain setting up of a limitation on the nuclear warheads both countries will be employing, and there is certain limitations on employing such nuclear warheads, and that treaty is related to that, right? So ultimately to reduce the usage of the nuclear warheads and to reduce the scope of any threat regarding this nuclear war in the future. The nuclear treaty was basically signed between these two blocs. So now this news is basically in the context of the US President Joe Biden basically extend the New START nuclear treaty with the Russia by 5 years, right? So Joe Biden basically extended this treaty years, right, which is the maximum term under which the Joe Biden has expanded or extended this treaty, and that will definitely prevent the arm race between the two blocs or between the two superpowers, right? Despite of increasing the tensions with the Moscow or with the Russia. Okay, now the day before the treaty is set to expire, the Secretary of the State, basically named as Antony Blinken, right, basically observed that the United States is extending the New START treaty, right, with the maximum allowed time of 5 years. So now this extension of this New START nuclear treaty will be extended for the maximum allowable time of 5 years by the Joe administration. All right, now the President Biden basically plans to keep American people safe from the nuclear threat. Obviously, when the two superpowers, threatening each other, obviously their own, the people would not be in the safer mode. So, in order to provide the people in the safe, atmosphere, you have to pledge, right? From you have to take away from such nuclear threats by restoring the US leadership on the arm control and non-proliferation of such, the nuclear warheads. Now, the United States also committed to effective arm control, right? If that commitment is executed on the real ground level, obviously that will enhance the stability, that will enhance the transparency and the predictability, and that will definitely reducing the risk of costly and the dangerous arm race, because arm race is something which is very dangerous also, right? Sometimes because of any provocation, if any such such incidents occur, that may kill millions of the people, and that is costly also, because every time you have to maintain that arsenal, isn't it? You have to maintain that many amount of the warheads, which is again very costly affair. The Vladimir Putin basically signed off the legislation extending the accord. It's the same nuclear START accord, right? And which is signed by then President Barack Obama in 2010, right, which will run up to 2026. Okay, and as I told you that this arm race, which is basically going on since the Cold War era, now try to reduce that arm race by signing this New START treaty, right? So under this treaty, the 1,550, the number of nuclear warheads can be deployed by both of these countries, by Moscow and the Washington, right? So try to reduce the arm race in that respect, because if Russia deploys say 2,000, the USA will deploy 2,500, and there will be an arm race. So right, so to reduce the scope of that arm race, this treaty would be immensely useful for the world also. Regarding Chinese arsenal, right, what happens is the former Donald Trump, the former president, who was basically the president of the USA, Donald Trump, right, it basically tore the previous agreement with the Moscow, which was related to the New START treaty, right? But what happens is the Donald Trump also tried to extend or try to expand the New START treaty to cover the China also. That means China is also threat to the world and to the United States also, isn't it? The China is threat to the Moscow also. The USA basically try to expand the scope of the treaty to include not only about the Moscow, but also to cover China. But it was unsuccessfully done. It was not covered, right? And now the Secretary of the State, Mr. Blinken, said that US would use the coming 5 years, right, to pursue the diplomacy to address all the Russia's nuclear weapons and to reduce the dangers from the China's modern and the growing nuclear arsenal, isn't it? So through the diplomacy, right, the Blinken, which is basically the Secretary of the State, would try to address all issues related to the Russian nuclear warhead, as well as the dangers which are caused by the China, which are caused by the China in this regard. So it will be it will be having huge scope in terms of the mitigation of the any threat related to the nuclear war, isn't it? Now next is India's weak fiscal position to remain a key credit challenge. So now you must understand the basically economic survey have come out, right? The economic survey basically predicted the India's fiscal position. So now this fiscal position is also weak because of this pandemic or because of huge spending, right, because of the deficit, and it is also a key credit challenge to the government of India. So the union budget basically focusing on the high capital expenditure, right, the financial sector reforms that we have covered in our last 2-3 the news, right? So the budget basically focusing on the high capital expenditure, financial sector reforms, as well as the asset sales, right, and that will try to help the stimulate growth, right, which has not been growing with that pace because of such pandemic and because of the less demand in the market regarding any sort of the demand. And there is also the supply broad based credit support will be given, right, to certain agencies so that it can pick up or it can stimulate the growth in the Indian context, right? So India's fiscal position is also weak, and it is also remains a key credit challenge to last year's, according to certain rating agencies which also predicted that one. So we'll come to that Moody rating, which also predict that India's key credit challenge remains very high. And the budget also predict the narrowing of central government fiscal deficit. Deficit means you have high expenditure but you have lesser resources or revenue. So that fiscal deficit stand at 6.8% of the GDP in the fiscal 2022, which was estimated at 9.5% in the fiscal 2021, right? So again, this deficit, which is the India's governmental fiscal deficit, which is narrowing down from 9.5% to 6.8% of the GDP in 2022. So which is also a sense of relief. Let's understand about the Moody's rating, what the Moody basically provide the rating regarding India's fiscal position. So Moody basically previously predicted the smaller central government deficit, which is targeting around 5.5% of the GDP for the fiscal year 2022. Now, which is basically down from 7.5% of the GDP in the fiscal year 2021. Now, it has predicted, right, or it is expecting the basically central government deficit to 5.5% of the GDP, which is again to the lower side. Okay, and if you compare with the previous budgets, the gap between the forecast as well as the government largely reflect the increased transparency, right? So whatever the Moody basically forecast and whatever the government forecast, right, that shows that there is certain set of transparency on subsidy spending as well as more credible overall assumptions which was made regarding this forecasting of such deficit. The rating agency further says that the widening of the deficit in the fiscal 2021 already know that it is because of less demand, because of pandemic, and right, and because of high expenditure to support Indian households, because ultimately the money power of the people has reduced because there was no income source and there was no option but to give that expenditure to the Indian household to boost that demand in the market, ultimately which has led to the high fiscal deficit to the economy because of pandemic shock also, isn't it? Now the Moody further says that given India's currently high burden, so India's have the huge debt burden also, right, the consolidation of any sort of a financial measures, right, would require the nominal GDP to pick up to very high rates, but that is unlikely to be happen, right? So that will basically consolidation will ultimately prevent any sort of a material strengthening in the government fiscal position over the medium term. So which is unless the nominal GDP grows up, we cannot, assume, or we cannot, assume that the gradual pace of consolidation will be taken place. All right. Next is Chora Chori centenary celebration. Centenary means completion of 100 years, completion of 100 years celebration of the Chora Chori incidents. Okay. So first of all, the Prime Minister Narendra Modi would inaugurate the Chora Chori or Chori Chora sanitary, the celebrations. So that sanitary celebrations would be, inaugurated by the Prime Minister Narendra Modi in the Gorakhpur district of Uttar Pradesh on the 4th of February 2021. Okay, because that incident occurred basically on the 4th of February to 1922. So that completed basically 100 years of the Chora Chori incidents. Okay, so to celebrate the inauguration will be done by the Prime Minister Narendra Modi, which is a landmark event in the country's fight for the independence in this regard. Okay, regarding the news, it was happened on the 4th of February 1922. Okay, the place Chori Chora basically is there in the Gorakhpur district of United Province. It was known as United Province. Now it was renamed as Uttar Pradesh. Okay, but in the basically after country become independence. Okay, during that point of the time when Chori Chora incidents occur, right, there was non-cooperation movement that was going on, right, and there was huge protesters basically participating in the non-cooperation movement, and these participants basically clashed with the police, and police basically opened the fire, right. And in what happens is when the police opened the fire, the agitators basically agitated further, and in retaliation the demonstrators basically attacked the police station and killed almost 22 policemen in that police station. So that incident basically led to the death of 3 civilians and 22 policemen in that police station. Okay, and Mahatma Gandhi basically was basically follower of non-violence. So he was agitated because of such violence occurred to that high level, right, which was not acceptable to the Mahatma Gandhi. So though Mahatma Gandhi basically halted this non-cooperation movement on 12th of February 1922, right, which is basically a total result of the outcome of this Chori Chora incidents in the Gorakhpur district of Uttar Pradesh. All right. Next, Govardhan activities. So what is that? The Govardhan activities is basically something is related to the organic solid waste management. Okay, Govardhan, organic solid waste management. All right. So here the Agriculture Ministry, the Petroleum Ministry, Animal Husbandry Ministry, and the Jal Shakti Ministry and Ministry of State for Jal Shakti jointly launched a unified web portal, right, for monitoring the progress of Govardhan activities. So the many ministries basically jointly launched that web portal which will monitor such Govardhan activities, and these Govardhan activities are basically related to the organic solid waste management. All right. So here the Govardhan is very important component of the Swachh Bharat mission, right, or the cleanliness campaign phase 2 for the organic solid waste management in our country. In the rural level, right, previously there was no proper way of disposal of the cattle dung, that is organic solid waste. But now with the introduction of Govardhan programs under Swachh Bharat mission, right, the people now provided certain the avenues for the disposal of the dung, right, and try to achieve the goal of open defecation free plus tag. So that is how it is, because of this Govardhan program, the open defecation free tag have been achieved by the people. And the Govardhan is basically a pilot project which was very important under Swachh Bharat mission, and it is very, very useful in the step of the cleanliness, not only in the rural area but also in the urban areas, isn't it? And obviously the farmers will also benefited out of it. So farmers will get the wealth from the waste in the true sense, right, because the farmers will provide the dung and all sort of things, and that will be utilized for manufacturing on certain important chemical or important products, isn't it? So it has tremendous benefits of not only the making the country the open defecation free plus status, but also the scheme of the Govardhan would also provide India ethanol, which will be provided, which will be manufactured from the dung or cow dung, biodiesel, compressed biofuel in the coming years, right? So it will have the huge scope in terms of reduction of any sort of a defecations, right, in the open space, as well as it is also will be strengthened in terms of production of ethanol, biodiesel, and compressed biofuel. Okay, so here this portal or unified portal of the Govardhan will further strengthen the rural economy, and it will monitor any such the organic solid waste management, with the convergent approach with various biogas project models and its initiatives. All right. Next and last, which is Atmanirbharta. Okay. So that word, so Oxford language basically chosen the word that is called Atmanirbharta, which is nothing but self-reliance, as a Hindi word of the year for 2020. Okay. So Oxford has recently announced that the Atmanirbharta, which is known as self-reliance, will be termed as a Hindi word of the year 2020. Okay. So here, if you go back in 2019, the Oxford Hindi was, also chosen the word called Samvidhan, or which was in the English name we call Constitution, right? Because what happens is, at that point of the time there was agitation. There was agitation in 2019 regarding abrogation of Article 370, which was related to the special status given to the Jammu and Kashmir. So that article was removed, or that article was abrogated, right? As well as the Supreme Court judgment also came regarding the Ram Janmabhoomi Babri Masjid dispute, which is very significant to resolve any such dispute, right? So both of these, both of these basically have drawn the world attention to the Constitution, right? Which has again made the Samvidhan, or the word Samvidhan, very famous, throughout the world. And that is the reason 2019, the Oxford Hindi of the word year was basically Samvidhan. Okay. But you must understand, the word of the year shows some sort of a resonated with the people, right? Which basically attracted towards that word during a given year. But there is no such guarantee that that word would added to the dictionary of Oxford, right? So there is no such guarantee that word will be ultimately added to the Oxford dictionary in that regard. Okay. Now, what is Oxford word of the year? First of all, you must understand, right? So the Oxford word of the year, that generally, it is an expression, right, which attracted the great deal of interest of the preceding year. So any outcome or any incidence, if that attracted the great deal of interest, right, that is basically comes under, Oxford word of the year, right? In 2020, the Oxford language did not choose any single word in the English, right? Since, the Oxford, or the, basically, the basically people who basically decide, they believe that the year cannot be summed up using a single word in that year, in 2020, right? And this year they have released, or Oxford basically released a language or a report which is titled as Word of the Unprecedented Year, right? In that, they have analyzed basically the themes such as COVID-19, right? And something which is related to that COVID-19 pandemic, for example, lockdown, the social distancing, Black Lives Matters. So all such incidents occurred during COVID-19, isn't it? That COVID-19 has attracted the people, and that was also, given, unprecedented, the attraction from the people, and that is basically titled in a report called Word of the Unprecedented Year 2020. All right. And in 2019, the English word of the year was basically climate emergency. In 2018, right? And in 2018, it was toxic, and it was 2017, it was youthquake. So you can say that in 2019, the English word of the year was climate emergency. In 2018, it was toxic, and 2017, it was youthquake. All right. So these are basically Oxford word of the year. All right. So thank you very much for today's session. We'll meet again tomorrow for our next current affairs. Till then, thank you.